She was born in Ireland and educated in England. By 17, she was a teacher here. By 25, she was running her own school in Wimbledon. And a well-known intellectual, part of the Sesame Club, in contact with so many intellectuals here in London, doing so well in life. But look at the transforming power of Swamiji. Suddenly she left everything and just went to India and dedicated her whole life to working out Vivekananda's message. So this is no small thing. What causes a transformation like this? This is what we will observe. And then we will go into the PPT, the visual presentation which I have prepared. The thing is, Sister Nivedita, that's a very interesting part of the story, when she first met Swami Vivekananda here in 1895. And Mrs. Isabel Margeson had invited her to her home. There was a small gathering of people, and Nivedita thought it was a cold morning. She thought, let me see. She had heard of Vivekananda and his success in the parliament. She just went. And the words which Vivekananda spoke, and most of all, Swamiji's personality, that impacted her in such a way that she understood that what this man is speaking is absolute truth. And it is his life. It is coming from his life. It is not coming just from his mouth. He has realized what he is speaking. Vivekananda especially that day spoke on Vedanta. So all of you know what is Vedanta. See, everywhere that I have traveled, I can tell you this, I have not yet come to this. Let it be there. But everywhere that I traveled, and I traveled quite a bit, I will tell you, Vedanta has an instant appeal to people's minds, especially to young people. Do you know why? Because it is about self-knowledge. It is about myself. It's about the self. Who does not want to know who he is? Tell me. Is there anybody on this planet who doesn't want to know the unchanging principle of his personality? So Vedanta has this instant appeal only for this reason. It is a direct first-person research methodology into the nature of our consciousness, pure consciousness. And they have actually developed the research methodology in such a way, what we traditionally call Vedanta Vichar. This has come today into the science of consciousness. This is another story. It's not part of the story, but I'm telling you why Vedanta appeals, why it transforms minds like this. Especially the young and the intelligent, immediately they are able to catch this. So this power is inherent in this philosophy because it is studying the nature of our consciousness, not the nature of our thought, not the nature of your thought and emotion. Psychology is there to study that. But consciousness studies this is what they are asking for in consciousness studies. What is the nature of my bare awareness? What is signified by this I sense in me? It is a search after that. And these rishis came to conclusions. They understood that the very nature of the human being is pure awareness, pure consciousness. You can feel it in certain moments in your life, especially when the mind is stilled, when you are watching a beautiful sunrise or sunset, and somehow your inner being has attained quietude. That time you can feel a reverberance within yourself. You can feel the vibrancy of bare awareness. So from this arises our I sense. When you intensify it through spiritual practice, it is called sphuran. It is your pure being reverberating within you, which gives you the sense of I exist, the sense of pure existence. So this, if anybody can catch this in the first person and revel in this, you will actually enter Vedanta. You will come into self-knowledge. So because Vedanta is talking of this and has discovered methods towards this, it has instant appeal, immediate appeal, that this is a dimension of human life which has to be explored because it is to do with my true being. What is the point in knowing everything in the world but not knowing who I am? So Vivekananda actually spoke of this Vedanta on that day in 1895. And he also spoke about the yogas, which are means towards this knowledge, whether it's Bhakti Yoga or Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, all these are means, paths towards this knowledge. And immediately Nivedita's mind opened up, as it were, another world opened up for her. And she understood that this man is just talking pure truth, the truth he has realized. So then came the transformation. Now she wanted, suddenly in a few months' time, she started calling him master. She accepted him as her teacher. And in a few more months, she decided to dedicate herself to his cause. And at that time, Vivekananda, while he was still in London, he knew the Indian problem. See, this was very long back. Okay, you must imagine the scenario at that time. Education was minimal amongst Indian women. So Vivekananda always was on the lookout for women educators to educate Indian women. And first, when Sister Nivedita suggested that she could, one day, it happened like this. It's a very interesting episode. Vivekananda suddenly said in the course of a talk, he said, do you know what the world needs today? It needs 20 men and women who can stand on the street yonder and declare that they know nothing but God. God-conscious people he was speaking of. And then he said, what is there to fear? If this be true, then what does anything else matter? And if this is not true, then what do our lives matter? This is the most important truth of life, he's saying. And this, suddenly Nivedita felt a change within her when this happened. And then when she went home, she wrote to Vivekananda that I want to be one of that. I am prepared to dedicate my life for this realization and for your mission. So then Vivekananda hesitated and paused, because it's not easy for a lady brought up here and born in Ireland. First of all, the heat of India and the circumstances in those times, the conditions there. And if at all the Orthodox conservative Hindu society will accept her, these were all huge questions. So he hesitated, but things worked out in such a way that Nivedita finally did arrive in India. And in 1898, the year when she came, see, it was a complete dedication. I'm telling you, she came to just stay there and serve Vivekananda's cause and to practice spiritual discipline under his tutelage. A complete dedication of life. And one of the first things which Vivekananda did was he took her to Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi. And how instantly Mother accepted her. She called her Cookie, which means my little daughter. And the way Mother accepted, it was a big bond, between Nivedita and that's another story altogether. I want to show it to you on slides, so I'm not going into it just now. But then Vivekananda gives her brahmacharya, and then she's ushered into a period of spiritual discipline, and she has to firsthand understand the Indian culture, the Indian spiritual heritage. So there is time for all that. And in the same year, in November, during the Kali Puja, she began her work also. She started her school. See, she was one of the pioneers of women's education in India. She has played many roles. The first role was this. She was an educator for, not that there were no schools for girls at that time. Schools were already there. Brahmo Samaj and all these were running schools. But nobody ran a school the way Nivedita did. It was unique because it was run along national lines. What does that mean? That means a large part of our cultural and spiritual heritage was part of her training. She introduced that to her girls. I can tell you amazing incidents, on all this. And that is how she educated her girls, and she taught them to love India. She taught them to love their nation first and to be proud of their heritage. See, she herself was treated like an outcast, in many ways in that conservative society of that time. but she taught her children, her girls, to respect every Indian custom. So she was remarkable in many ways, I can tell you that. One day, this incident is on record from Sarla Bala Sarkar. She was a student of Sister Nivedita. So she was sitting in the classroom and she had heard of Sister Nivedita's great love for India and her dedication. And then suddenly Sister entered the classroom. She would wear that long robe with the mala around her. And she came and then she suddenly told the girls, do you know, you must first and foremost love your country. You must love India. And how will you love it if you don't know it? So you must know India. You must know its cultural and spiritual heritage. And how will you know it unless you meditate on it? If you don't meditate, how will you know the glory of the realization of the rishis, the glory of the spiritual heritage of that country? You should meditate on India, she said, and she sat down right there, removed her mala and showed them how to meditate like this. Bharatvarsh, 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 like this. And all the girls were so touched. And Sarla Bhala writes in her reminiscences that seeing that picture of Nivedita, I knew India was the heart of her heart. It was the soul of her soul. And Vivekananda's great message, this lady had completely imbibed. She had been transformed into a means for Vivekananda's plan for the reformation of the masses of India. She was the bridge between Vivekananda and the people for many years. Almost one generation she affected deeply with her spirit, She was like this, always inspiring, always on her toes, always serving and putting self aside completely. How selfless Nivedita was. She was, when plague broke out in Kolkata, she was seen in Bagh Bazaar. Bagh Bazaar is, today you go to Bagh Bazaar, it's a very nice place. At that time, it was a huge slum. And there was plague everywhere. And Nivedita was seen with this huge broom in her hand, cleaning the streets of Bagh Bazaar. Until young men came and said, sister, this is our job, let us do it. Like this she was. She was seen balancing on ladders and painting disinfectant on the walls of the patients' homes. And she had a meager diet of fruit and milk because that heat she couldn't eat properly. She kept the milk aside for the patients of plague for many months. This was Sister Nivedita, very unique life, or life of total. That's why, Rabindranath Tagore called her Lokamata. She has served the people like a mother. Selflessly, totally, dedicated spirit. And then, so you see, all this she did. Then, after Vivekananda's passing, she was part of the Indian freedom movement. She inspired so many revolutionaries with her very fiery speeches. And, the way she inspired them, they would look up to her. In fact, people like Bipin Chandrapal, they all said that she's more Indian than Indians. Somehow she's able to grasp the essentials of the Indian spiritual heritage. And if you actually read her works, her writings, they will introduce you to India's culture as no other literature can. It is like that, her books, even if you read Master as I Saw Him, how she has understood Vivekananda. And if you read her other books, those cradle tales of Hinduism, the book on Kali, Mother Kali, how she has understood all this, it's really remarkable. It's like a mirror you can hold before every Indian to acquaint him with his own heritage. Her works are like that. And how she adjusted in that environment, really, see, when first time when she was in Kolkata, she would take her students to the Kali temple from time to time. And they would worship, they used to enter, she was not allowed to enter. Even Vivekananda at that time was not allowed to enter. So she would make her way through the those of you who have gone to Dakshineshwar, you will know what I mean. She would make her way through the Chandni Ghat, go behind the Nat Mandir of Kali temple, stand there and pray to Mother Kali with tears in her eyes. Mother Kali was her Ishtam. She was her chosen deity. And you know who saw her in that state? It was Parul, the first president of Sarada Math. Pravrajika Divyanandaprana Mataji was a young girl at that time. She was a student of Sister Nivedita. She saw her standing like that with tears in her eyes, praying to Mother Kali for the welfare of the country, the welfare of her, like this. And then she says, later in her reminiscences, Bharti Prana Mataji said, I do not know if any person was more fit to enter the precincts of the temple than Sister Nivedita. How she has lived there and served the people, it's really remarkable. It was a short life. She passed away at 44 by all the hardship she undertook actually in India. But India has had no such friend. That's why I always focus on her life. And wherever we can, we should be able to show it was a life of utter dedication. And her aim was spiritual. You know, her goal was spiritual. It is as a spiritual discipline. See, exactly the motto of our order, what Vivekananda introduced, Atmano Mokshartham Jagadhitaya. Her aim was spiritual in going to India, and her energy went towards working for Vivekananda's mission. It total dedication to that cause. So this was the remarkable life of Sister Nivedita. Let me show you the pictures because that is very interesting. Yes, we'll go through her life and also let me see how I make myself comfortable here. Yeah. Yes. See, her life was meant to be different. She was born of Samuel Richmond and Mary Isabel, and Nobel actually was their surname. And on 28th October 1867, she was only 4 years younger to Vivekananda. Was greatly influenced by her father with religious zeal, service-oriented values were seeded early in life. And her father died very young at 17. And she took up the responsibility of rearing her younger siblings, sacrificing her own needs. That's why she became a teacher at the age of 17, actually. Then she was a writer by 20. Very original thinker. The greatness of Sister Nivedita was in her intellect, you know, very refined, higher intelligence, very original thoughts would come out from her pen. By 20, she was writing, and her writing spoke of her sensitivity to the sufferings of the neglected and downtrodden section of humanity, labeled the poor. As a teacher, she believed that educational effort must begin at the standpoint of the learner and help him develop in his own way. This idea she always held because she was influenced by the education movement, the ideas given by Froebel and Pestalozzi here. So she translated that into her own writings. Many of those ideas you will find. And also you will see her insistence on education of emotion in the human mind. This was unique part of, at one time, you know, I studied her, the actual key points of her educational policy in her school. One of the most important things was today what we call emotional intelligence. She insisted at that time. And she said that unless you change this element in the human being and make it really selfless, noble, and elevated, you do not actually change the human being, whatever education you give him. So you see, she used to say it's only 1/3 of the personality you will change if you go by only giving analytical training. So today we are bringing all these ideas in, but Sister Nivedita said this 150 years back, so many years back. She said that the most important part of training is the refining of human emotion. Then let's go to the next slide. So meeting her master, post the Parliament of Religion in 1893, Swami Vivekananda went to London in 1895 and gave many lectures and was hailed as the Hindu yogi. And her first meeting in London, she got invited to his talk hosted at a common friend's house, Lady Isabel Margeson. She developed interest in Indian religion and philosophical thought and had great reverence for Swamiji's lofty ideals and his strength of character. In fact, it was Swamiji's astounding purity and strength of character that affected her. Later, she put it in her writings, you know, that here I saw the heroic fiber of this man. And what he spoke was absolute truth. And so I believed in it. And that is why I followed him. And I desired to make myself a servant of his love for his people. Isn't this remarkable? Just think and see. This power Vivekananda had. Even today, he continues to transform minds. But in that time, you see, this lady dedicated everything immediately and went to India. So next slide, please. Swamiji envisions her future role. Swamiji's watchword for the upliftment of any nation was the development of women and the people. Common refrain in many of his lectures in England was the need for a handful of dedicated men and women who could stand by him in this endeavor. He envisioned Margaret's role in his rejuvenation plan for India. So he has written, I have plans for the women of my own country in which you, I think, could be of great help to me. He wrote this to her. That time she was Margaret Noble. And on 29 July 1897, Swamiji pens from Almora, let me tell you frankly that I am convinced that you have a great future in the work of India. Your education, sincerity, purity, immense love, determination, and above all the Celtic blood make you just the woman wanted. He in fact called her a world mover at one time. And he said, she's a real lioness. He even once wrote to one of his disciples, she's a real acquisition. All these comments he has made on her. So, see, this was in 1897 when he wrote this. In 1898, she came over to India. Swamiji was at that time still thinking as to whether he should give his permission or not. But then he was at the docks to meet her. So he invited her. So next slide, please. India gets one of the greatest friends ever. By 18, Margaret understood. See, she was in search of religion. This is why this slide has been put here. She was in search of, she studied Buddhism, she studied Christianity. She was in search of something which she could hook on to completely. So Vedanta at that time was not much known, but somehow it appealed to her very intensely. And so by 18, Margaret understood religion meant search for the eternal truth. But true spirituality was far removed from the worldly life in the Western world. She was unsatisfied here when it came to this. So a troubled soul at that time, she studied teachings of the Buddha for 3 years. But that also, she was not satisfied with that. And then she felt Swamiji's clarion call come like a ray of light and hope. So suddenly she felt a kind of transformation with the coming of Vivekananda. She made up her mind to go to India. Swamiji assured he would stand by her unto death. She renounced career, fame, home, and family and arrived in Calcutta, January 28, 1898. Awake, awake, great ones, the world is burning with misery. Can you sleep? Vivekananda writes this in one of his letters. So you see, this is the beauty of the Ramakrishna order. It can accommodate any mind of any religion. Because Vedanta is not, again, another part of Hindu religion. We don't see it like that. It is the science of consciousness. It is part and parcel of, it provides the basic philosophical framework in which you can accommodate every religious thought. That is why it is so broad. And you can't say just it is something Hindu. And the Ramakrishna order, that's why it stands for universal harmony. Everybody is welcome, any type of mind. Only you, if you can connect with the ideas, yes, you can take it up. So this is how she came to India. And next slide, please. See, defining events early on. She bonded with Mrs. Sarah Bull, Miss Josephine MacLeod greatly while at Belur. So they were also, you may be knowing, very close to Vivekananda. And where Swamiji acquainted all of them with the Indian cultural heritage and his work. And the three were destined to be entwined intrinsically with the Ramakrishna mission history. All three played great roles. Then March 17th was a day of days because that was the day when Nivedita met Ma Sarada for the first time. And affectionately, she addressed her as Cookie. A divine relationship got cemented, which overcame the barriers of language, religion, orthodox traditions, caste, and creed. and mother loved her dearly. March 25th, 1898, Swami Vivekananda initiated her into brahmacharya. Margaret became Nivedita, the dedicated one. Margaret's mother had vowed before her birth that if the child was safely delivered, she would be dedicated to the service of the Lord. Her mother's vow was fulfilled and Nivedita felt doubly blessed. Next slide. Yeah. Then the great metamorphosis under Vivekananda. She had to go through a spiritual practice. So you see, Swamiji instructed Nivedita on India and that sacrifice is the essence of service. He resorted to meditation and reading the Bhagavad Gita to cast off ego, doubts, resentment, and acquire humility to absorb the corrections of her master. He took her on the Himalayan tour, to Almora. Even now, if you go, you can see all those places. I live close to there, so I can watch for this. Even now, all these places are there where she was blessed by Swamiji and the transformation took place. Then the benediction came in Almora. Swamiji blessed her with knowledge with a mere touch, and Nivedita stood transformed from a rebellious to a true disciple. So one day it happened that Swamiji touched her head, and that day she had a very deep meditation and a transforming experience. So after that, her life, you will see, it was one of just absolute dedication. No more that there was a kind of, she was a militant of a militant disposition that gradually withered away. And once Swamiji had written this to her, in a poem, be thou a loving mother, fearless but tender like the southern breeze. May your life glow like a flame of the sacred fire, full of strength, pure, radiant, without a simile. Yes, next. Then he also wrote this poem to her. The mother's heart, the hero's will, the sweetness of the southern breeze, the sacred charm and strength that dwell on Aryan altars, flaming free, all these be yours and many more, no ancient soul could dream before. Be thou to India's future son, the mistress, servant, friend in one. See, he envisioned this kind of a future for Sister Nivedita, and she fulfilled his vision. We can say this. It was such a blessed life. You can go to the next slide. I have lots of slides. So you see, this was one of her first projects, initiating women's education and the opening ceremony of the school. Today it's called the Nivedita School. At that time, it was called the Ramakrishna School for Girls when she started it. Today, have you been there? Any of you? It's a huge complex giving education to thousands of girls. So opening ceremony of the school was held at 16 Bospada Lane. Now 16, 17, and even the surrounding areas have all come into the mission. So a lot of work is going on there. There's a museum in her name. There is a kind of university settlement coming up in her name. If you visit next time, you should go to all those places. It all began with this. So in Kolkata, it was performed, the opening ceremony was performed by Holy Mother in the presence of Swami Vivekananda, Brahmananda and Shardananda on 13 November 1898. Kali Puja day it was. And because mother opened the school, Sister Nivedita was jubilant like a child, She said, this is the best omen for the education of the future Indian womanhood. So that the culture goes into the girls. The insistence was on that. The next. See, Swamiji's wish was all great qualities preserved within the Indian women be transmuted through education to a new set of values in keeping with modern times. His idea of man-making education, training to control will, continence for intellectual and spiritual power, greatly influenced Nivedita. Together with Sister Christine, she gave her all to make these concepts a reality through the establishment of her school for children in the morning, for the married, unmarried, young widows in the afternoon. Her focus through education was to foster the spirit of public service and the national dharma in the Indian women, while not sacrificing family ideals rooted in thousands of years of Indian culture. There can never be any sound education of the Indian woman which does not begin and end in the exaltation of the national ideals of womanhood as embodied in her own history and heroic literature. Sister Nivedita writes this in one of her works. There are very many incidents on this, uh, because she would say that a woman's highest education is her passionate love for Sita and Savitri. She would say this to her students because that's the natural way to imbibe those values. So just love those great characters in the epics and you will get the values, she would say. Nivedita worked to awaken India's ancient teaching, that of sacrifice and love, through her unique methods of imparting education. So you see the kind of training she gave. She trained the girls. She also gave vocational training. There, if you go, you will find a lot of embroidery, which she taught her students, and always tried to see that even if they moved out of school, they should be able to stand on their feet, earn something. She made sure of that. And she really looked after them like a mother, actually, even feeding them, because a large part of a school were those young widows of those times, you see, and they had no such education, no family support. She would feed them. She would make sure they learned something so that in times of need, they can earn their own living. So all these kind of things she has done in the school. The next slide. Blossoming of the Sarada movement. We call it Sarada movement. It is actually part of Ramakrishna order. But, the Nivedita Girls' School was, we call it Adi Mat. Before the Sarada Mat began, the Nivedita school had already begun long back. And the seeds of this Sarada Mat began from Nivedita school, because the first batch of nuns, they actually lived there in Nivedita school. They taught there, they lived there. So we call it Adi Mat. It's the beginning of the Sarada movement. So Sudhira Devi, the right hand of Sister Nivedita, gave up hearth and home to dedicate herself for the cause of Sister Nivedita's school. Sudhira started an ashram for dedicated women workers and a boarding school for students in the school called Matru Mandir. Later, it became Sarada Mandir. And the ashram was a prelude to a mat for women, realization of Swami Vivekananda's cherished dream. Vivekananda had this great dream and vision to establish Ramakrishna Mat and Sarada Mat. And which was first on his list? Sarada Mat. He spoke of it even before the establishment of Ramakrishna Mat. And he envisioned, he actually said, with mother as the center, once more will Gargis and Maitreys come out of that Mat. So today, if you go there, 1954, Sarada Mat was established, and its beginning was from the Nivedita school. So you see, it's all connected. Sister Nivedita played a very big role in this entire movement, I can tell you that. Even today, if you go there, everywhere we have statues and photos of Sister Nivedita. What a dynamic personality she was, inspiring so many people. She inspired a generation, I'm telling you, in her time. So see here, mural depicting events that led to setting up of the school and Sri Sarada Mat. All this you will find in her museum today at 17 Bospada Lane. She was a beacon of selfless work. See, she says there is no possibility of true work and great life possible only when the sense of union with the place and the people amongst whom we find ourselves. What a little thing it would be to any of us to die for one whom we really loved. It's a natural, spontaneous dedication, you see, because she loved. The love she spoke of was neither compassion nor pity, but the consequence of perception of spiritual oneness. She felt she was spiritual fundamentally, and that is why everything is. So how did she work? She went out of her way to assuage locals in her Calcutta home neighborhood in times of distress and grief, like that plague relief which she conducted, in the form of money, literary contributions from her pen, or even letters of recommendation. She carried out her noble work ceaselessly. In times of epidemic outbreak, natural calamities like floods, etc., that hit Bengal, she led a group of relief workers, fearlessly opting to work right in the affected areas, tending to the afflicted, bringing help and hope to the distressed people. She had no qualms in offering help, be it cleaning the streets, ditches, removing sewage, or disinfecting homes. Sacrificed her regular diet of milk to meet the expenses of patients who could not afford treatment. All this she has done in the streets of Kolkata. Next. So, see, she also designed a flag in 1905. Nivedita designed a national flag for India as early as in 1905, inspired by the ancient symbol of the Vajra, a symbol. No, it's not a symbol of Buddha. It is the symbol of Dadichi. You know, the Vajra, there's a story behind it. This is wrong, actually. That implies the selfless man. The thunderbolt is I'll tell you the story. The thunderbolt is the symbol of renunciation and service. According to legend, Vajra was created from the bones of Rishi Dadichi as a symbol of supreme sacrifice. So there was a demon called Vritrasura, something like that. Yes. So he could not be killed. And then it was found that he can only be killed through the bones of a realized person. If a weapon is made out of those bones and thrown at him, then he would be killed. So this sage, Rishi Dadichi, willingly gave his bones for the creation of a weapon which killed the demon. So it was an act of pure courage and self-sacrifice. So the Vajra embodies that spirit. So she put the Vajra on her flag. The spirit of India should be this. She was simply, full of that energy, embodying the spirit of Bharat. She would not call it India. She would call it Bharatvarsh. Sister Nivedita really sought her identity with the spirit of Bharat. She identified the common factors that made India a nation. She first outlined the fundamental laws of the birth of a nation. She pronounced that the complexity of variation, when subordinated to the nationalizing influence, is a source of strength and not weakness to a nation. So where the unity of India lies, she would point out. She reiterated the fact that the cultural ethos and heritage were responsible for national integration. So she would say this, you see, if the whole Indian nation could agree to give, say, 10 minutes every evening to thinking a single thought that we are one, nothing can prevail against us to make us think we are divided. For we are one, and all the antagonisms amongst us are illusions. The power that would be generated by this can hardly be measured. Like this, she fired very fiery speeches she would give, and you will see how many revolutionaries fell for her words. Next slide, please. She was called Shikhamai, by Aurobindo and these people, because you see it's put here, the burning flame in the field of journalism. She promoted pan-Indian nationalist views, both in her writings and public meetings. Her powerful pen exuded a cascade of ideas that took the nation by surprise. A young woman, she was so young at that time. She was 32, 35, and standing for Indian freedom, along with all the revolutionaries of those times. Besides writing for Prabuddha Bharat, she contributed to journals like Sandhya, The Dawn, Statesman, Bombay Chronicle, Tribune, Amrit Bazar Patrika, New India, etc. Aurobindo and Bhupendranath Datta was the younger brother of Swamiji, started a new weekly Yugantar, and due to her efforts, Nivedita's efforts, the circulation of the journal touched more than 50,000 copies. Aurobindo named her Shikhamai, a burning flame. He left the responsibility of the journal's Dharma and Karma Yogin in the hands of Nivedita when he went for exile. Enormous work she has done, I'll tell you. You'll see it in the slides. Next slide, please. See, contribution to literature and art. Sister Nivedita wrote profusely on many facets of Indian culture, philosophy, art, and history in journals like the Review of Reviews, the Prabuddha Bharat, the Modern Review, etc., under the byline Nivedita of Ramakrishna Vivekananda. Her prolific writings include The Master as I Saw Him, Kali the Mother, The Web of Indian Life, Cradle Tales of Hinduism, An Indian Study of Love and Death, studies from an Eastern home, myths of Hindus and Buddhists, footfalls of Indian history, religion and dharma, civic and national ideals, and complete works of Sister Nivedita. Her writings on Indian art gave a new direction and sense of purpose to artists of modern period like Nandalal Bose, Avanindranath Tagore, Surendranath Ganguly, and Asit Haldar, and others. She urged that the revival of art would greatly contribute to national awakening. Rabindranath Tagore had great regard for this versatile genius and felt Nivedita to be an exceptional soul. So he called her Lokamata. Avanindranath Tagore considered her as meditating Uma. Like she was a spirit of austerity, that was there in her personality. So he called her like that. And then freedom fighters and prominent men of her time came into close contact with her and found in her a lighted torch. Bipin Chandra Pal, Rash Bihari Ghosh, Vajendranath Seal, P.C. Rai. You may be knowing they were all well-known freedom fighters of their time. Gurudas Banerjee, Bhupendranath Bose, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Sarojini Naidu all felt her sacred touch. Sir Neel Ratan Sarkar, an Indian doctor and educationist, scientist Boshishwar Sen, his big book is there. I don't know if you have seen, where he talks about this. Motilal Ghosh, the editor of Amrit Bazar Patrika, Girish Chandra Ghosh, Jadunath Sarkar, Romesh Datta, who was an economist, and others across fields had the opportunity to interact and be inspired by her. And the famous Tamil poet Subramaniam Bharati held her in great respect and said she was his guide in spiritual life. Next one. Yes, J.C. Bose and Sister Nivedita. Bose first met the sister introduced through Swami Shardananji in 1898 when Bose was undergoing immense dejection and turmoil in his life. So he had to face a lot of struggle. That time, she was a big blessing for him. The meeting served to be a blessing. She soon became a friend of the family, and Nivedita had firm faith and believed that his work would place India in a glorious position in the world. She believed that he had a sannyas in mind, and he pursued knowledge for its own sake. So she motivated him and supported him in every way, and to write his own book and assisted him in writing his scientific papers and books. In fact, she edited many of his books. There's enough proof for that. Next slide. See, it was Nivedita's wish to have Vignan Mandir, which Dr. Bose completed later on and established Bose Vignan Mandir on 30th November 1917. At the entrance to the building is a marble relief of Sister Nivedita by the renowned sculptor Padma Shri Vinay Pandurang Karmakar. This was done on the lines of Nandalal Bose's famous painting of Nivedita named The Lady with the Lamp. See, this is there. Yes. She was even part of, when there was these decisions going on whether the IISc was to be constructed in Bangalore. She was also part of that. She insisted that it should be done and Indians should be given higher education in science. So next slide, please. Here, Sister Nivedita's influence on J.C. Bose's writings. So this article, actually, this is proof to show you that she edited Jagdish Chandra Bose's books, and supported him totally in that period of turmoil when it was not being accepted, his work. So that time she stood by him. And so the results show that during the association between Bose and Nivedita, Bose's style of writing changed considerably in comparison to the earlier period when they did not know each other. It shows Nivedita helped Bose in preparing his journal articles and books. The results reveal a distinct change in Bose's writing style after his meeting with Nivedita. So this is how she helped him in all. She would help everyone who was doing anything big. She always stood for them, especially where she was situated in Kolkata. A whole lot of intellectuals were around her at any given moment of time, and she inspired so many of them because she was a spiritual soul. All of them, actually, many of them came to Vivekananda through her talks, through her writings. The next slide. That Swami Vivekananda was the inspiring force behind the envisioning of IISc Bangalore is less known among the masses at large, but even fewer know the contribution of Sister Nivedita, the selfless rally undertaken by her to make the dream of her master come true, because there was a lot of opposition in British India for the setting up of IISc, and she rallied against it. Because Vivekananda very much wanted this to happen, that science education, higher education in science for Indians. And in fact, his contact with Jamshedji Tata also. So Nivedita worked towards all this. And last days were in Darjeeling. The strain of running a school, in addition to her enormous literary output and other outreach activities, told on Nivedita's health. She retired with the Boses to Rai Villa. Today, you know Rai Villa, it's a center of mission, in Darjeeling on September 22nd, 1911, to recuperate. But that was not to be. She contracted blood dysentery on October 7th. She knew her end was near. She prepared her will. Everything in her, of her, and by her was dedicated to her motherland. And that is why you see the next slide. What happened? Next slide. Yes, that is why this is written, in her epitaph. Here reposes Sister Nivedita, who gave her all to India. Her memorial in the lap of Himalayas proclaims this. Dr. Raj Bihari Ghosh, the great revolutionary, said this about Sister Nivedita. Our sister fell under the spell of India. We in turn fell under her spell, and her bewitching personality attracted thousands of our young men to her. If the dry bones are beginning to stir, it is because Sister Nivedita breathed life into them. She also lived only till 44. I don't know if Swamiji and she had lived long. How much would have been done? But anyway, it's a remarkable life, a life full of energy and activity and dedication, selflessness, real Vedanta to the core. See, spiritual transformation does this. Whenever I have spoken of Sister Nivedita, finally, this is how I concluded. Our take home from all these slides should be this, that you see, human life has a higher purpose that has to be fulfilled somehow. And Thakur used to say this, in so many ways, that the only purpose of human life is the realization of God. All these lives, great lives, you will see dedicated towards, that was the main theme of their lives. And that is why the energy came out in this way. So then if that is the goal, your energy will naturally come out towards the highest ends of life, towards great ideals, towards a dedicated effort towards the realization of great ideals. So this is a spontaneous follow-up of a great goal. So Sister Nivedita's life of utter dedication, from the outside, it appears like a dedication. From her own standpoint, it was a fulfillment. It was a joy. She served like that. And that is why we can take so much from this life. A true inspiration, a true disciple of Swami Vivekananda, and a Vedantin to the core. If you see her writings, you will find interspersed with Advait Vedant. She believed in the power of the soul, and that is why it came out like that. So you see, this was a remarkable life. I think I have crossed my 1 hour.
Continue. 2 minutes before 6, we have Aarti.
Okay, you should tell me.
Yeah, you can continue.
You want a Q&A? Do you want a Q&A?
If there are interesting questions, I think, or otherwise, you can continue.
So I can tell you some of the modern trends. See, we have such inspiring ideals in our culture, definitely. But what are the modern trends along these lines? I can tell you this. Initially, I told you why Vedanta appeals, isn't it? What is the magic there that is making it so not just appealing, but people are wanting to dedicate their life for this search, for this investigation. The beauty of Vedanta is it transforms you through your intellect. The transformation is through your thinking faculty, through the spirit of inquiry and investigation. And today, with educated people, that's the main faculty functioning in you, isn't it? So it appeals. instantly. But please remember this, the beauty of Vedanta lies in the practice. Inquiry is you do it with thought. So, but it culminates in Nididhyasan, isn't it? Shravan, Manan, and Nididhyasan. It should come to meditation. Otherwise, there will be intense thought activity, self-inquiry, but without meditation, it will get blown away after some time. Cloud of other thoughts will come and blow it away. So these two go together, inquiry and meditation. This is the heart of Vedanta. So if you actually see their lives, life of Swamiji, Sister Nivedita, you'll see both these elements were present. First of all, clarity regarding the goal, clarity regarding the ideal, and then some amount of spiritual practice based on that. Without sadhana, it is not possible. The entire discussion in Princeton was on sadhana. And what interest. You can see the video, it's on Vivekvani. You see the questions they have asked. So it will make you a sadhak, not just an inquirer. Vedanta is like that. I told you it is transforming in effect. It will make you into a sadhak. It is only through sadhana and the power of meditation that you realize what Vedanta is saying. So please take care of these two things, because many times people are pursuing inquiry, pure rational investigation. That is very nice. Yes, it will clear the way for you. But Vedanta is not about thought. It goes far beyond that. It is knowledge of your awareness. It goes beyond thought. So there must be spiritual practice. Otherwise, you won't get it. So that is the beauty of this entire thing. In the life of Sister Nivedita, Swamiji, you will see a lot of spiritual practices there. Sadhana is there. That is the means to the realization of Vedanta. So do you have any questions on this?
Sadhana in particular, because that is the logical consequence of.
Yes.
It would be nice if not just factual information, but anything to do with, there are obviously many sadhakas here. Yeah, please.
When you do spiritual practices, sadhana, and when the grace of God is there,
yes,
they say the inner life begins.
Yes.
Reflection things follow.
Yes.
The inner life begins.
Yes.
Can you explain what is the inner life?
Yes. See, inner life means life in awareness. Life lived in the life, in the light of awareness. Just now, how we are living? We are only partially alive and awake. Compared to that, what do we mean by this? See, when your thoughts are not in your hands, when your emotions are going anyway, when your will is constantly changing direction, when your awareness is intermittent and minimal, you live a partial life. Am I right? Isn't this what is happening? See, thoughts are not, thinking is happening. I am not thinking. This is the usual state for most people. So also with your emotions, so also with our awareness is only intermittent. I don't understand much by it. When this is the situation, you are living a partial life. Vedanta wants you to live a full life. Full life means mind is in my hands. My awareness is complete and full. Deeply awakened state of awareness. So I live in the now. I am riveted in a sense in the now. And that is why you feel the entire, you're vitally alive when you're intensely aware. So you live a full life. This much only is Vedanta. It is wanting you to live a full life, not like a sleepwalker, half awakened, not like that. So to be able to live a full life is to live in full awareness, which means you must be vitally alive within yourself. Sadhana is meant for that. If that does not happen, you will not feel the power within you. And you actually cannot work also. You're just, satisfying the survival needs of your life, your family, that's all. So to be able to do this, you must awaken yourself from within. Do you know how is the mind of the awakened one? That is why you should study their lives. The mind of the awakened. You can see it so clearly in Thakur's life. Constantly going into that state and coming out. He was in Samadhi so many times in Kathamrit you will find. And coming out and radiating that intense bliss of that state. Everybody around him would feel the impact of that state. Let me give you a story here to help you understand this state. This is a story from the life of Buddha. So, see, once what the mind of a Buddha is like. This is what the story says. See, once there was, after his realization actually, the Buddha was so steeped in bliss that he didn't want to go out of that place. He would just be around there. And once in the day, he would go and beg his food from a nearby village and come back there and just wanted to be there and simply reveling in the bliss of his experience. He lived like that. For many days, he was like that. And then one day when he went out to beg in the village, there was a potter working at his wheel. So he came before that house and the potter did not even look up. He did not, although by that time, no, a whole lot of people had come to know that a realized Mahatma, the Tathagata, lives there. They had come to know of it. This potter was deeply engaged in his work. He did not look up and he said, "Oh, there is a beggar, go to the next home." He did this. And so Buddha walked to the next home and then they gave him food and then he walked a little more. Then he went out of the village, he went back to his forest. After this happened, the potter's son came running there and told him, "Father, did you see him? Did you see him?" Then the potter said, "Whom?" He said, "The Tathagata came here. The Tathagata walked this street. People saw it. He's the realized one. Did you see him?" And then this man got the shock of his life. He said, "What? Did he come here?" Then he burst into tears. He said, "The Tathagata came to my homestead and I didn't offer him food." So he ran into the forest. He ran into the forest, but it was already dusk. So he could not find his way to that Bodhagaya tree, that tree there. So the next day again, that night, he couldn't sleep. He came back home. And the next day again, he went through that path and he found the Tathagata. He was sitting under the tree and actually radiating bliss. And such intense, that you see, there would be such stillness around the Buddha. You could feel it for a radius of 2 miles because he had stilled his mind. So when he came into the presence of the Buddha, he fell at his feet and wept and said, "Please forgive me." And the Buddha said, "For what?" And he said, "I didn't offer you food yesterday." Buddha said, "See, in my experience, there is no yesterday and tomorrow. There is only the now. And I'm satisfied in the now. I don't even remember what you did yesterday. So don't feel sorry." The mind of the Buddha. When you are in awareness, you are in now. When you are out of awareness, you are riding the waves of your thought of the past and the future and what is to come and what did not happen and all this. So you see, to be able to capture this state, then immediately that man said, "You are the Buddha, but I am an ordinary person. So forgive me." And the Buddha said, "See, that capacity, I forgive you totally. But there is nothing to forgive because my mind does not acknowledge yesterday and I don't remember what happened yesterday. So don't feel sorry." The mind of the Buddha, the mind of the realized has to be studied, understood, and you will feel something of that state. So this is the whole purpose of sadhana. Yes.
You talked about Nivedita.
Yes.
So Nivedita can be done through karma works or devotion, need not to be a
Yes.
psychic exercise only.
See, Nididhyasana is the word used in Vedanta after Shravan and Manan. It is equivalent to meditation. But meditation is of various types. You can meditate through devotion and all that also. But meditation is a state of being. That has to be attained. Now, out of devotion, can I attain it? When you are in devotion, there will be a bhakti vritti in your mind. You may not exactly come to the state of utter stillness. So Vedantic meditation is to be practiced. See, the purpose of Vedanta is to come to the knowledge of the self. This is not a knowledge of an object. This is your own, the unfoldment of your consciousness completely. Isn't it? Is the self an object? No, it's the subject. How to know the subject now? Only by becoming deeply conscious. Deeply, deeper, and you will come to the state of Nididhyasana. So you begin with Shravan, Manan, but you must end up with Nididhyasana. Without that, it's not possible. Without meditation, in fact, nothing is possible.
So I heard that rishis could meditate under a tree for like 8 days. How can you keep concentration for that long?
See, you can keep what you're calling concentration. If the mind itself is put down, won't you be completely focused on something? If all your, see, what is mind? It's just nothing but thoughts. If all your thoughts are arrested, but you are fully aware, then you can stay in a fairly concentrated state for long periods of time. In fact, there's no time for you. Time is in the mind. Physics doesn't tell you that, but the fact is that time is in the mind. So when you put down mind, there is no sense of time. See, when you sleep at night, do you have a sense of time? You don't know whether you slept 2 hours or 4 hours or 6 hours. Only where the clock will tell you how long you slept, because you put down mind. So time is in the mind. Am I right? See, if it comes to Vedanta, we can keep talking for hours. But just now the concentration is on Sister Nivedita. Yeah.
Can you give us some practical tips how to lead a spiritual life in the midst of working, raising families, also
Yes.
being members of communities? So,
Yes,
We
yes.
have multiple roles.
Yes. The most practical tip is you must do some form of spiritual practice every day, like some meditation, arti, puja, whatever you feel like, but something to still your mind. And understand that all these roles are just, transactional, temporary. One day you'll have to put them down. With this seriousness, if you can practice some spiritual practice every day, it will help you a lot. And then the satsang, the kind of associations you make, they impact the mind. So if you can take care of these two things, some form of spiritual practice every day and good association, it can even be through books. Whole lot of people are doing it through videos, YouTube videos and all this. So good association is very important for the mind. Another thing is practical tip, because you are asking, see, a whole lot of our mental problems are due to our deep sense of identity with things. You must learn to put down identity a bit.
How do you do that? How do
You fulfill your duty, but your sense of yourself is quite transformed. If you can generate this state. See, now you play different roles every day, but you change the gear as soon as your circumstances change, isn't it? Like when you're at home, you can't be the boss. At your workplace, you can be a boss. Now, how you do that? How you put down identity at that time? Just like that. Your identity sense, if it is put down a bit, this inquiry and research is possible. That is why I'm telling you this. Are you getting my point?
No.
See, now if I ask, who am I? Usually the picture which will come into your mind is what you are doing in your workplace. You're a doctor, you're an engineer, you're teaching, those are the pictures which will come to your mind, and your body will come, the image of your body will come to your mind. If this happens, how will you pursue who am I? Inquiry. When I ask who am I, the mind, nothing should come to the mind. Vivekananda once said that as long as when I say I, the picture of the body comes into my mind, so long I'm only a dualist. When that picture does not come anymore, then I have gone into non-dualism, Advaita. Are you getting my point? Your sense of I cannot remain just invested in the roles you play. Become a little independent of that. Then you can genuinely inquire, who am I? Otherwise, you're fixed already. I'm this, I'm such and such. Then there's no point in asking, who am I? Isn't it? So a little, this identity crisis is a good thing, actually. Little you should think about this, that my sense of I, what does it mean? What does it signify? What is the import? And you will go into Vedanta. But if it's fixed already, then it's a danger, I'm telling you. Because then you will work only around that identity, and it will become very strong.
That's when we leave our ego.
Yes, that it has become the ego then.
Is that the advice you can offer to those of us who've chosen not monastic life,
Yes,
like Samvit sometimes referred to third order,
yes, right,
so women?
yes. So what do you want me to suggest?
Just any advice? that,
Yes.
help in spiritual
Yes, see, today's society gives you the permission to do this. You can stay and you are not in a monastic order, nor are you in maybe a married state of life. So no family responsibilities. That way you can devote more and more time to spiritual practice. Most important thing in about spiritual practice is what intensifies our sadhana is only one thing: the clarity of your mind, the purity of your mind. So for those of you who are in the third order, you must aim at this. The whole purpose of sadhana is to bring the mind to that rarefied state where it can reflect the nature of the soul, isn't it? Thakur gave us a formula, you remember, pure mind is equal to pure buddhi is equal to pure Atman. It's a formula. So you can generate a state of mind which will give you the real taste of I, the pure I. So you must aim at that. That is the whole point of all these institutions and doing all these activities. What is the point of all this? It is to get us knowledge, isn't it? Self-knowledge, devotion to God. So to prioritize this in your life rather than anything else, everything will fall in place. There are a number of girls like this working with me, and constantly they are in my office and telling me, Mataji, what can we do? So I always tell them this, that go to the shrine and sit there and intensify your spiritual practice, because without that you can't do anything, I'm telling you.
How do you focus your mind?
How do you
Focus your mind.
focus your mind? We studied completely the science of focus according to yoga psychology in Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, just a few days back. So the practical way to focus the mind, see, there are many factors involved, but the most practical way is your ability to cut out what you don't require at the present moment. Your ability to unclutter the mind. It is a very important part of building focus. In fact, it's the first step, the uncluttered mind. We are treating the mind like a waste paper basket. Have you seen? Anything goes in, oh, it's okay, I'll forget it, no problem. You won't forget it so easily. You'll repeat and it will become a sanskar. So it's not easy as the refresh button on your phone. Yes. So take care of this. Your capacity to unclutter the mind will help you build focus. And then you must sharpen attention, rivet attention. That is a whole huge thing. I can't tell you here in 1 minute. You can watch the video. There are so many videos now on focus. Science of focus is there. Watch that video. To declutter the mind itself is a big thing. Is it a small thing?
Vedanta and Advaita, when we hear the talk, read them all, it really goes inside.
Yeah.
But when we read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, every other page will say Advaita is not for you. Do japa.
Yeah.
So is Jnana-Mishrit Bhakti the way, or how can we balance between
Yes.
Vedanta and the Bhakti which Thakur and Holy Mother says?
Yes.
Bhakti. So
Yes.
what's the correct way?
Jnana-Mishrita Vedanta is the way. See, you can't do without bhakti. Where will you put your emotion? And it's quite strong in everyone. So that's why it's a constitutional necessity that you practice Jnana-Mishrita Bhakti. But don't think Swamiji, Thakur said Advaita is not for you. Not exactly. Many times, in fact, if you see him telling his experiences, many of his experiences in the gospel are Advaitic. He's seeing the one consciousness in all beings and talking from that plane. But as a sadhana, he always insisted that you practice bhakti also. Because if you don't do that, you can't make peace with your emotion, isn't it? And it can be quite strong working. Then you will misplace it. You'll put it somewhere else. So better you turn it towards God. That is what he meant. But Advaita is something which is so fundamental to, it's in the very structure of our experience. So it has instant appeal. See, same thing happens to us also, the leaning towards Advaita is so strong that anything else we take as a path towards that. But practically, you should understand that I need to practice these disciplines for this to become real in my life. Take it like that.
There is one thing that is Ramakrishna always said, you need a bhav. So would you please tell that about what is the bhav mentioned? It is very difficult for us because we are a family person.
See, by the word bhav, many things are meant. In Bangla, especially when you use the word bhav, it includes your emotion, mood, your disposition at that particular time, your mindset. It includes all of this. Now, Thakur said, Ekta bhav thaka chai. Definitely. See, to relate with God, you require a mood. In Vedanta, what is the bhav there? It is nirakar nirgun bhav. It is also a bhav. It is also you see, in your mind, through your mind, you are trying to understand it initially. But that's why I told you, there will come a time when you will understand it's not of the mind. Your awareness reflects in the mind. It is not of the mind. So then you will go beyond this. Whatever you are doing with your mind, thinking, inquiring. So that would be a deeper, I would say, consciousness. Yes. So like that, you have to understand. See, only the practice of meditation will teach you how to proceed. There is a beautiful statement in yoga, yoga, yogena jnatavyo, yogo yogat pravartate, which means you can know yoga only through yoga. By yoga, I mean meditation here, not the exercise and all that. You can know meditation only through meditation. You can proceed in meditation only through meditation. If you don't do it, you won't know it. That's all. If Sri Ramakrishna had that experience, what does it matter to you? It should happen to you, isn't it? That is why meditation. You understand?
Yeah.
It's a first-person research, transformation, and inquiry. Yes, I think time is up now, Maharaj.
Anyway, we are grateful to you, Mataji, for the